distinguished delegates, I think we want to start our side event. Let me welcome you all to this side event that has been organized by the Secretariat, looking at supporting the implementation of MRV arrangements and transparency framework under the convention, and certainly also under the Paris Agreement. Let me indicate that we have this distinguished panelists, 6 of them, that will be sharing the work they do in terms of providing support to developing countries in various forms. We'll be happy to listen to what they do in these countries. Begin with, I hope many of you know me already, but still I need to mention my name. I'm William Kojo Ajimai Bonsu. I'm the manager for Mitigation Data Analysis Program, supporting in particular developing countries in their reporting obligations, but also in doing the NDCs and other things that developed countries are obliged to do under the convention. Today's side event, we have a few presentations or short presentations by the panelists that are here, 5 minutes by each of them. And after this presentation, we would have questions that we expect some of the panelists to respond into. Once they are done, we would request reflections from participants. If you have anything that we want to say or share experience in a very short time with us, we'll open the floor for you to do so. I have with me distinguished colleagues from CGE, with the chair of CGE, Stefan. The JEF Secretariat is also with us. GIZ, the Global Support Program, the ICAT, and I think a lot of them would need to explain what these symbols mean, especially ICAT. And we have United States also with us. Without further ado, I would want to move on to these institutions to make short presentation. We'll start first with the CGE. Stephen. It will be controlled from there for you. Don't worry. But you need to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, William. And I am delighted to be here on behalf of the CGE. Briefly, the CGE provides parties not included in Annex 1 to the convention technical support and advice in an effective, adequate, and sustainable manner to build the country's capacity in meeting their reporting obligations to the convention. And of course, the CGE's mandate, of course, was extended by another 5 years in 2019 CP19, and therefore this mandate, the current mandate, ends in 2018. The objective of course, is to improve the process of and the preparation of national communications and biannual update reports by non-Annex 1 parties through the provision of technical advice and support. The CGE, of course, to be in a position to deliver on this mandate, has developed a 5-year work program focusing on its strategic priorities. I will skip naming the priorities so that I do not take unnecessarily too long. And in terms of how the CGE delivers its mandate, of course, we build capacity of parties through regional training workshops. And because we focus on several areas, our main focus, of course, is national communications and BURs. And therefore, our regional workshops, of course, are tailored to cover the main areas, of course, covered in reporting, including vulnerability and adaptation assessments, mitigation assessments, and greenhouse gas inventories. So, and then we have also developed, developed materials to, of course, to meet this mandate, relevant related, of course, to the areas that I've mentioned. And we have also developed materials, of course, to train the team of technical experts that are involved in the ICA process. Now, what have we done so far? Of course, it's summarized in the slide on that's already projected. We have, of course, as of now, delivered through in-person workshops, the region workshops. We have trained up to 516 experts. Of course, through our e-learning courses, we have a total of 235 active users. And we also conduct, of course, webinars, because the webinars, of course, they have got their own advantages. You might not go into a lot of details, but at least then you can easily reach larger masses, of course, with very little resources. And therefore, through these webinars, again, based on vulnerability assessments and adaptation assessments, mitigation assessments, and of course, greenhouse gas inventories, we have reached out to 469 participants. Now, we also have, of course, have an e-network, which is a collaborative platform where, of course, any member or any interested party, of course, can access, log onto the website, share ideas, and also learn from others and other parties, and also even from download even the materials, of course, that are developed for the different training courses by the CG, among others. And with that, perhaps I would pause and then wait for any further instructions from the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'll now give the floor to GEF to also introduce to the audience what GEF does. We know very well that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. We were given a very simple question: how does the GEF support MRV and transparency? And one slide to tell that story, and it's not so easy. So we spent quite some days and quite some hours in consultations, and this is what we came up with. So the way we understand the MRV and transparency as part of the convention as well as the Paris Agreement, you can see it over here. So the MRV side you see in the blue. In terms of the international MRV components, there are national communications, there are BURs, which will lead to the ICA. And there are domestic MRV elements related to the domestically supported NAMAs, which are considered voluntary, as well as a report on domestic MRV that are to be included in the BURs, and that would obviously feed into the BURs. In addition, there are MRV for RED+, which is considered voluntary. And on the transparency side, we do understand, I can't even see this myself, there are inventories, NDC progress tracking, and in addition, there are a couple of items that are considered as of now should items, such as the climate impacts and adaptation as appropriate, as well as the financial technology transfer and capacity building support needed and received. And the top two elements would feed into the technical expert review and facilitate multilateral consideration of global stocktake. Can you hit that one more time? One more time? Oh, excellent. So with the schematic of how we understand the MRV and transparency requirements, what you can see right now are the areas where the GEF is currently providing support. And we were also asked to identify what would fall under finance versus capacity. So in terms of MRV, you can see that GEF is supporting the preparations of national communications and BURs. And member countries of the GEF and non-Annex 1 countries do get up to $500,000 for each national communications that they provide, and that's full cost. It doesn't come out of the national allocation for the GEF, it's guaranteed. And $352,000 for the BUR. And if a country is interested in undertaking other items that are considered voluntary, such as a domestic MRV component or MRV for the RED+, they do have the option to actually utilize their allocation to do these kind of activities. In addition to providing of financing to carry out these activities, we are also providing capacity building opportunities through the Global Support Program, as well as the inclusion of capacity building elements within national projects. In terms of transparency, as you can see, inventory, NC program, progress tracking, and other elements, there are no clear guidance to the GEF as of now, and we do anticipate those elements might emerge depending on the negotiations and what parties would wish the GEF to undertake. The guidance we have right now is to support the capacity building for transparency. It's called the CBIT, Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency, which came out of the Paris Agreement. And the trust fund for that has been established. And we will be looking to announce the first set of national and global projects next week during the high-level segment. So this is just to give overview of what the JEF is doing in terms of supporting the MRV and transparency. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jeff. And now move on to GIZ. Oscar?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for this invitation from the Secretariat to present the work that the GIZ is implementing in the fields of MRV and accounting or transparency. So basically the GIZ as an implementing agency is carrying out work in different countries on behalf of the German government. And as you can see on the map, we are working on 29 global, regional, and bilateral projects in up to 18 countries in these fields of MRV and transparency. As you can see, the number and the countries, the regions are different. The size of the countries don't matter. So we work in big countries such as China, India, or Mexico, but we also provide support to countries with small populations and also, well, with small number of or amount of emissions, such as Georgia or Tunisia. And apart from this bilateral support that we provide to specific countries, we have some regional projects on transparency. For example, there is a regional project on the accounting rules for the achievement of climate change goals in non-Annex 1 countries that is supporting Mexico, Colombia, and Costa Rica. And we have global project, which is a very important project that runs since 2010, and that this is the support project for the International Partnership on Mitigation and MRV. This project was, this initiative was launched by South Africa, South Korea, and Germany in 2010, and it is a platform for over 90 countries with the aim to advance on negotiations on mitigation and MRV, and to support the design, setup, and effective implementation of NDCs, low emission development strategies, NAMAs, and MRV systems. It conducts a series of activities, always in regional groups. There are regional groups for Latin America and the Caribbean, for Africa, for Francophone countries, for Asia. And in these regional groups, peer-to-peer exchange meetings or workshops are organized, also capacity building activities. There are also some annual events such as an annual partnership retreat, partnership meetings at the negotiations, and through the work of this support project, a series of knowledge products, guidance documents are produced. Apart from this global project with these regional groups, we have another project, Information Matters, which is also working globally, but is providing support to 8 countries. So under Information Matters, we are providing support specifically for enhanced reporting. So we are providing support to 8 countries, which are depicted in the picture as well. They include Ghana, Chile, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, Vietnam, Georgia, and I think I forgot one, Philippines. I think that the Philippines, that's the last one. And so we are building, strengthening capacities to enhance reports, to provide enhanced reports, especially PORs, and to set up or enhance MRV systems in these 8 partner countries. And under this project, what we do is, on the first step, identifying specific needs and priorities of the MRV systems and GHG monitoring in the partner countries. We then provide tailor-made capacity building trainings and backstopping, and we support the process as well through these bilateral activities in these partner countries, through South-to-South exchange, and also through exchange as well with the German Environment Agency. So thank you very much. This has been my
Thank you very much, Oscar. So we move on to the Global Support Program, Damiano.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you very much for the invitation. This is a joint initiative by UNDP and UNEP, and this is actually possible thanks to the generous support by the GEF. We actually are a global program providing support in technical areas and in supporting capacity building to all developing countries. So potentially to all 155 developing countries. And our support is aimed at improving the quality and the timely delivery of national communications and biennial update reports. And we also have a component to try to improve the integrations of INDCs with this MRV framework so that the two can be better and stronger connected. It's an initiative that was launched a year ago. And as mentioned before, it's a good also example, I think, of interagency integration. Myself, as coordinator, I'm actually based in the UNDP offices in Istanbul, in Turkey. And I have a wonderful UNEP colleague based in Nairobi. So what are the criteria for access in case, and I hope that's the case, some of you may be interested to approach us and to receive support from our side. So we have two main kinds of support. We have a national one and a regional or sub-regional focus. Under the national focus, we usually get approached by a country for some specific support, and probably the most successful national support we've been providing so far, based on the comments the country mentioned to us, is their review of their GG inventory. So we provide an analysis based, of course, on mutual trust of their inventory, highlighting the good work done as well as potential areas for further improvement. So that helps to get some feedbacks before the inventory and the communication under BOR is presented to the international community. We also provide, for example, specific training on, for example, we've done this year on the use of 2006 IPCC guidelines on energy planning, or on components that are part of the national climate change documents, as they call them, or the NC or BOR. Also, we try to group together countries with similar circumstances and to foster the empowerment of countries and to support countries to exchange experiences among themselves. Who can request support? As I mentioned before, almost everyone, all developing countries that can be interested, please approach us, come to us. And on the areas, I mean, again, the most, on every, I would say, almost every area of the national communication or BOR, the most important ones are greenhouse gas inventories, mitigation assessment, regarding the national communications, the vulnerability and adaptation part, or on the establishment of the MRV chapter in the BOR. And we're also, actually, my person on behalf of UNDP, I'm part of the CGE. So we also try to work side by side with the CGE. And I also want to thank not just the chair here, Stephen, but also I see a colleague from Japan, Takeshi, here. So we try to work together so that we improve the coordination and we all move together toward the better capacities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Damiano. We'll move on to ICAT. John?
Yeah, thanks. If you can shift. Yeah, we were given the same constraints that Chis talked about. Well, we all give the same constraints. One slide, and then you can pack it as much as you want. And my colleague Lucas sitting down there made what I think is quite a neat one. So ICAT stands for the Initiative for Climate Action Transparency. And it was actually sort of pre-launched already in Paris, so something that we had developed over almost a couple of years before Paris, and then we were almost overtaken a little bit by events because we were discussing as late as November, I think, whether we actually wanted to call it transparency or not, and we were not quite sure if that was the right word. But of course, that came out in Paris very clearly. So we agreed at the end on this name. And it's set up in practical terms, as you can see there from the various logos. It's a trust fund set up in UNOPS, which is the UN Organization for Project Services, located in Copenhagen. So basically to have a UN-controlled mechanism to manage the funding. It has two bilateral donors right now, Germany and Italy. Italy has come in last, so I'm not going to talk much about their funding because that's being programmed right now. And then there are two foundations, the Climate Works Foundation and the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. And together, the German and the two foundations has contributed 11 million, which has been programmed so far. And then Italy has come in with another 5 million, and we are likely to get some more money for some adaptation work also. But essentially, what it wants to do is two things, is to help develop, you could say, the methodologies and the toolbox that countries will be needing to undertake MRV on initially on mitigation. That's where the whole thing started. As I said, it started way before even the INDCs were developed. But it's clear with the INDCs and the NDC focus on adaptation, we're well aware that we need to move on that, and we're just starting a scoping exercise to make sure that we can also gradually offer support on adaptation. But of course, it's two very different things in terms of methodologies and approaches, and we are well aware of that. But basically, it's divided into two, what we call pillars. Pillar one is managed by the Verified Carbon Standard. You can see the logo at the bottom, the VCS. We've got a couple of colleagues sitting down there. So if there are questions to the details of it, you can always talk to Jerry and David afterwards. And I mean, what we're trying to look at is of course, what is available already, and try to assess that in terms of relevance for application in countries. And you see the little one with all the various nice small figures is that we have 10 working groups established in a kind of open call process where we recruited experts from around the world to come into these expert groups. And it's partly some sectoral groups, energy, transport, agriculture, I can't read all of them, but forestry, blah, blah, blah. And then we have a non-state actor work. Then we are looking at one on finance, which is just about to start. And then we have transformational change and sustainable development. And as I said, most of these groups have been operational for a few months. There was a large sort of international call for expertise that was run by VCS and has brought all these people together. A lot of it is actually pro bono work. It's only the chairs who are being paid for it, but it's really something people come together on. So the idea is to, at the end of the process, after development, review, testing, and further development and review, we hope to have a toolbox that's useful to all the countries in a flexible manner. So that's the idea of Pillar 1. And then we have in the Pillar 2 that we're managing at the UNFCCC partnership. We have the funding right now to support 20 countries on, you can say, broad-based capacity building around transparency, but also linking it with testing and application of the toolbox in a sense. So it's not that people will be forced to do something, but all of them are interested in trying out different aspects. So some maybe even have a great idea about what they want to do, so we won't change that or impact that. The nice thing about the way it's set up is that money we've been given is quite flexible, because given that CBIT is coming, we know GIZ has been out there for a while, the MRV partnership and so on. There are lots of people working on this and have been working on it. So we're not coming in and saying, this is what CBIT will support you on. But basically come and say, we can help you structure the transparency work. We can help you go in more details if it's already structured. So it's quite flexible. And that is, of course, very welcome by the countries that we've invited into it. And as I said, we've invited 20 now. We're starting on programming the Italian funding together with an Italian institution called ISPRA. They're sitting behind the other guys. So in that process, we're likely to have another 10, 15 countries. Some of them, well, nobody has heard about, so I'm not going to name anybody right now. If you want to look at the countries that are involved, the first 21, you can go to the homepage. There's a homepage also. It's basically climateactiontransparency.org. And there you can go and find all the information about Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, where we are right now. Just for information, we are not sort of, it sounds like a lot of money, but when you have 20 countries, methodology development and so on, it's roughly about 250,000 per country. Some of it for support, but some of it for in-country work by national institutions, of course. And it means we can't do everything. You can help on structure things. You can help go in detail if that's what people want to do. But what we're also looking at is trying to see, and we already had the first country that said, can you help us develop as the first thing a proposal for GIS on the CBIT? So that's something they're looking at to go in detail, of course, because if you get additional money, and the whole idea is also to try and combine the different initiatives and not make any form of competition. So that's where we are right now. We are starting up in a number of countries, and as I said, the methodology work is quite advanced already. We don't have funding for more than what I talked about, but we're keen to hear about countries that are interested, because that might help find money for it. But and then, as I said, we are starting seriously on the adaptation side now, and we hope that we can contribute to that also in the course of the next year or so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Now I'll move on to our last panelist, certainly not the least, USA.
Great, thank you. I'll start out by saying that I work with USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, but our little banner here says United States because actually we're representing a range of programs that involve the support and engagement from quite a number of our U.S. government agencies. And I'm actually going to provide this overview, and later in the panel, I am going to hand it over to our greenhouse gas inventory expert from EPA to provide more information. What we've got here is just a collection of probably some of the larger global programs that the U.S. government supports internationally. So to highlight some of the work that we do, but certainly not all of it. Starting with our global program of enhancing capacity for low emission development strategies. This is a global program that is working in, well, in fact, it works in over 25 countries when you include some of our regional support to help develop capacity building for low emission development, strategy development and implementation, as well as for work on the MRV and understanding that the inventories that form the basis of good low emission development. The majority of the work through our EC-LEDS program is in fact programmed bilaterally, so at the country level, and really varies depending on what the country has requested, and it takes a variety of shapes. Quite a bit of that work on the MRV side has been supported in one way or another with interaction with EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, as well as some of our other agencies. The next program, the Silver Carbon Program, is a program that is focused on helping to provide support for countries to improve forest measuring and monitoring systems, and particularly also to assist in developing MRV systems for RED. This is another program which is a multi-agency program that is kind of brings together most of the key U.S. agencies that are involved on forest and other terrestrial carbon mapping, for instance, the Forest Service, USGS, NASA, EPA, among others. And the idea there is to bring together coordinated support to help improve ability for forest carbon mapping and measuring. It also interacts with a broader international effort, the Global Forest Observation effort, to increase coordination among other donors and organizations. Next up is Surveyor. This is another collaborative program between the USAID and NASA, which is providing, as well as regional centers. So it's providing regional support in a number of places, including East and West Africa, the Himalayas, and Southeast Asia, And it really is focused broadly on helping to provide capacity and support for using geospatial data for improving management. And obviously this is very important for thinking about how to develop good MRV and design on the land use side. Next is our resource to advance LED's implementation rally program. This is a relatively new program, and it is more focused on providing support in the clean energy space. It provides tools and resources to facilitate LEDs and NDC implementation overall, but is specifically working on a number of tools for providing support for measuring clean energy, including what is called the Clear Tool Protocol. And then it is working collaboratively with WRI and the NDC partnership to develop an NDC toolbox, which includes support around transparency efforts. And then finally, just to highlight a new effort that we're engaged in, which is our new NDC Leadership Compact. In this program, which we're actually kind of formally announcing later this or next week, Monday, at the US Center, we are focusing on showing how we're working with a number of countries to really help to implement their NDC activities, as well as to understand some of the core aspects of transparency connected with them. Wrap it up there.
Okay, thank you very much, United States. Now we'll move on to the next segment of the side event, where I would ask questions to the panelists, select a few of them to respond to the question, and I'll come back to you as audience. If you have any questions that you also want to pose to the panelists or share experiences, we'll have time for that. First question, which you see on the screen, and I'll be asking that question to the GSP and ICAT, which is Damiano and John. Over the past few years, the extent and degree of participation of developing countries in the MRV process have increased substantially. As a result, more and more developing countries are confronted with increased need for support, including financial, technical, and capacity building, to facilitate their effective participation. Could you please share with the audience, as you engage with developing countries, what are some of the key factors that you take into consideration in making a decision who to engage with and on what? I will start with the GSP. Damiano.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as I mentioned before, starting on who to engage. On one side, we welcome all developing countries to approach us. But at the same time, we are taking a proactive role. And one of the key elements that we're trying to incentivize with country is that they can be in a better position to have a better ownership over the processes and over the documents. And in a certain way, try to help countries to becoming more empowered and to be able to exchange lessons learned and capacities, starting from institutional arrangements, which is probably the key area of this kind of work. As you may all know, traditionally, national communications used to be outsourced in most of the cases. So while that was useful until a few years ago to start building the initial capacities and to be able to elaborate the documents in time, we think we're now at the time, especially in the Paris Agreement area, where that outsourcing should gradually move toward national institutional arrangements that have an understanding on why effort should be put into this document, and also to be able to take a domestic advantage in the elaboration of these documents. So to be more specific on the work that we did this year, apart from the work done at the national level by countries that approached us, we focus our efforts into 3 regional areas, which are West Africa, Latin America, and the Pacific. And a bit to mention why we started with these regions. So as I mentioned before, and that was why I started with that introduction, we think it's very important to empower countries and to have them collaborating together as peers. In this sense, we had originally discussed at the beginning of this year with a few Latin American countries, and mostly with Chile, on the importance of establishing a GHG inventory with Spanish-speaking Latin American countries. Why? Because Latin American countries, and again, I mostly refer to Spanish-speaking countries from Mexico all the way to Chile, have the same language, very similar conditions, and they have developed so much individually at the national level, and in several cases there's no need to reinvent the wheel. So providing a presential and virtual platform for countries to exchange has been one of our priorities. Indeed, we had an initial meeting also in partnership with GIZ, which I want to thank. And right now, I was very happy. As I was here, I saw countries that are exchanging information. I saw Colombia, they were just launching their third national communication, and they exchanged, look, guys, this is what we did. Why don't you, we also have this feed, it's in Spanish, why don't you use it? Ecuador replied, wonderful, we try to use the feed. And I think rather than working individually with each country, it's much better. And countries have, most of the cases, better capacities than us because they do the BUR, they do the national communication. On the ECOWAS, ECOWAS has an advantage in the sense that it's a strong regional integration. While there's compared to the Latin American case, there's a disadvantage of having 3 different languages. ECOWAS countries, which are 15 countries, speak French, Portuguese, and English. But they have a political integration in place. So again, in partnership with FAO, we had an event there. We asked countries to nominate 2 focal points for each country. Focal point, I mean, the people inside the government that will provide follow-up to this. And I think it's been quite successful because I just had a meeting with the distinguished minister of Côte d'Ivoire, and they mentioned to me that they will bring this issue to their ministerial meeting on Sunday. On the ECOWAS case, we realized that it's also extremely important to partner not just with us, those on this side of the table, but also with regional institutions. In the specific case, we had the opportunity to work with the CRE, which is the ECOWAS Center for Renewable Energy, and with Agrimet, which is the Center for Agriculture. It's institutions that are based there, that know the local conditions, they have wonderful capacities. And these are key to improve the sustainability of these efforts. On the Pacific, it's actually, I don't know if anyone is from the Pacific here, and I would like to invite him, her. We have this event at the beginning of December, and again, thinking on the importance of partnerships. We were partnering on this with the governments of Singapore and Australia, and try to leverage the capacities they have and try to use specific approaches. So, very final comments on the key technical areas. Right now, we probably think that creating capacities or improving capacities on GHG inventory systems and try to have a holistic system that can integrate as well, not just measurement, not just inventory reports, but also the MRV parts. And the very, very last comment, we also think it's very important also to coordinate from our side as donors, especially if we want to foster this partnership. And indeed, we have created a small and informal group of friends in MRV, which we think is a tool to try to coordinate all those initiatives, which are very effective, but try to foster that effectiveness. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Damiano. I'm sorry to rush you through because I want others to also have enough time to respond to the questions that the audience will also have the opportunity to interact with us. John.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's a good question because we've done in UNIP and UNFCCC, we've done quite a number of multi-country projects over the years. We are doing technology needs assessment support with GEF funding also in 25 countries now, done 35 before. And I mean, that the selection process goes through, of course, the requests and so on formally before. I mean, in this situation, it's a little different because here we had, you would say, the idea and the funding up front. So you have to find out, so what countries should you involve? And of course, the starting point is obviously always that the countries state their interest and that they're interested. But that's something that you can do a little bit in the abstract. And I'll give you one example. Last year, we provided technical assistance. Again, sorry, Jeff, it keeps coming back to CHIS. but with GEF funding, we helped 35 countries prepare their INDCs. Quite a rushed process, but they actually all submitted and they were pretty happy about it. But in one of the sessions, I basically presented the ideas of ICAT in a sort of relatively early stage to them and saying, this is something we expect to launch and pass. Is this something that you think would be interesting? And literally all 35 sort of put their hand up. So I mean, because of course they all know this is going to be an issue. It doesn't mean that when you then ask them formally, they're going to jump up and say yes right away. But the interest is there. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And that, of course, clearly is coming out of the Paris Agreement also. So in terms of the 20 countries that we selected, I mean, so lots of interest out there, but then it's a little different. That's why I said we tried this a lot of different times. So if you're doing it like we're doing in ICAT, which is what I'd call a kind of piloting effort, you're trying to develop the tools, you're testing them out. You need to have countries that are what I would call reasonably capacitated. And don't ask me what reasonable mean, but just they need to have enough to participate, because if you work with countries that cannot actively participate, then it doesn't really work. And of course that is nothing to do with the size of the country or anything like that. And we work literally with all the countries over the last 5-10 years, so we know pretty well what the situation is. And of course, regional spread, we have reasonable, I think almost equal distribution between Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and a couple of island states. And then we try to look at as far as we could, at kind of topical spread, at countries where forests are important, countries where energy are important, so on, to try and cover that whole range. And then, of course, if they have some MRV experience, we can see what other people are doing. We looked a lot at what GSA have been doing, what US been doing, and of course, where we are also as part of the seat of the GSP. There are too many acronyms. Anyway, so the last thing is, of course, also that some of the donors have their own ideas about what countries are either fully legally eligible or simply some priorities they state at the same time. And then you combine all these things, to be honest, and come up with what I think is a good selection for the project. And we have lots of countries that have asked us, so why not me and instead of this one and so on. And honestly, I can't answer it one-on-one because that's not the way it works. But it's a combination of all the things. And and what we do practically is that we invite them formally through the UNFCCC focal point, and then get hopefully a positive response, and then go and talk to them about what are the relevant institutions to involve, and then basically take it from there. So that's the engagement part.
Okay, thank you very much, John. I would open the floor quickly, so that if there are any questions or any experience from the audience that you want to share with us, we can do that. You can post your questions to Damiano and John, and I hope they will be very happy to respond to that. Any questions, comments, opportunity to share experience, please. Identify yourself and then make your intervention.
Yes, thank you very much. It was pretty interesting to hear your experiences and your work. Just have a question for GSP. Are you planning to come to East Africa? I represent IGAD, which is the ECOWAS of East Africa. I'm lucky. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other question, comment, something to share? Okay, it doesn't seem to be the case. So, Damiano, can you respond?
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, I missed somebody. Ah, okay, please.
Thank you very much. While looking at ECOWAS with an impressive record, and my colleague's question as to whether or not you're coming to East Africa, I am curious because there is also the Africa Agenda 2063. And I'm just wondering where we can fit it in within this framework. Thank you.
Okay, please, Damiano. If John, you want to add to the last one, that's fine.
Thank you very much. On the first question, of course, we would like, and we are a global program, so we have at least 4 more years of resources for doing so. No? So it's also, I would encourage you and everyone else interested to approach me after this meeting, because it's important for us to establish making contacts and establish having an understanding on what kind of needs are there in the region, so that we can intervene. But we have the will, we have the funding, so I would say so. And on the second question, I have to admit I'm not very familiar with the agenda that you mentioned. But this is why I say it's very important to try to cooperate with regional institutions, because they are for sure more familiar on the needs and the conditions that are at the regional level. And I think I've had this tremendous and positive experience with the CRE and AgriMet, and it's something that I will try to foster more and more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's clear from the presentations from the two institutions or agencies, we see very clearly that the goal, all of them, is to ensure empowerment of the countries to respond to their convention reporting obligations, I would say, which is more basically the MRV. They also seek to enhance South-South cooperation, and in particular for GSP peer learning. Cooperation with existing regional institutions has been one of the key things or that they look for, how they can, with these regional institutions, help in building capacity. And for certainly donor coordination to avoid duplication and increase efficiency at this level, this regional and national levels. One important point that John also made, and which again was emphasized by Damiano at the end, is the country drivenness. So if East Africa is interested, I mean, East Africa must express interest. And then certainly that interest will be matched by the needed support that is required. And one thing that also fascinated me was the point made by John that you look at existing capacities of the countries, so that at least you are able to augment that, enhance those capacities through the program that you do, which is very, very important. But then in doing that, you also ensure that there is regional and topical balance, or to some extent spread, you said. So these are the things that I gathered from there, and we'll move on to the next round of questions, which will be going to our colleagues from CG, GEF, GIZ, and the United States. So the second question, as a support provider, how do you contribute toward improving the capacity of countries that you engage with to design robust MRV and transparency systems that are both, one, sustainable over the long term, and two, helps countries meet their enhanced requirements and obligations with respect to MRV and transparency? And I'll be asking this question to United States first, CG, GEF, and the GIZ, USA, please.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Mosmi Desai. I work at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and I work on our greenhouse gas inventory team, but I also coordinate capacity building efforts to support countries on improving their greenhouse gas inventories. So that's what I'll be focusing on. We have some other efforts too to help countries improve facility level reporting and also look at modeling scenarios and et cetera, but I'm going to focus on inventories. So we work with countries to help them produce more transparent, accurate, complete, consistent, comparable greenhouse gas inventories. And in this work, we have two complementary sort of approaches when we're working with countries. That first component focuses on improving institutional capacity. And this is focusing a lot on helping countries build a sustainable national inventory management system. So building a system that can sustain experts leaving, so the experts can come and go, but the system continues. That's sort of the ultimate goal, and it's an incremental process. It's not something that happens overnight, and also that the inventory can then still meet the needs of policymakers. So I think that's the lens we have when we're working on institutional capacity. And the second component is improving sort of the technical capacity, and this is working with countries to help them apply the IPCC methods, improve data collection where that's possible, in some cases helping them obtain data, for example, in the land sector. So these are the sort of two complementary components which we work with. It's certainly also a country-driven process. When we're meeting with countries, how much we're working on those components and where the needs are definitely depend on the country and that partnership that we have. And I think it's important to recognize on the technical component, one thing we've definitely learned is there's expertise that exists across all these sectors in the country. The main challenge comes in using that expertise to apply the IPCC guidelines, and also then using that expertise to organize the system. So in working with countries on these two components, we've also developed a number of tools. And again, this approach is something that's evolving as we work with countries regionally and bilaterally over time. It's certainly something we started, I think, over 10 or 15 years ago, working with the Central American region. So a number of the tools we have are direct outputs from that effort and input from those countries as well in terms of what they needed. So we have components to support these two two components. And one of the tools that we have that's available to everybody is called the Developing a National Inventory Management System Template Workbook. And again, it's a tool, it's something that countries can use to adapt, but mainly it's intended to help countries think about how they can organize and plan national inventory management systems. Again, one thing that we found that's critical is having institutional memory. And in order to do that, it's really important to try to document what you're doing, retain the information so that as new people come in, they have a place, they have a starting point. And having a really good document serves as a foundation so that you're not starting from scratch. So I think that's one key tool that we have. On the technical side, we also have tools to help with data assessment, to guide data collection, help identify forms that you can send in particular sectors to collect information, like the waste sector. We also have software tools that we've developed, for example, developing inventories for agriculture, land use, and forestry involve a significant amount of data, and data that's also required across categories when we're compiling that information. So there's a tool that we've worked in partnership with USAID and Colorado State University called the ALU software. It's called the Agriculture and Land Use Software. And there are versions consistent with both the latest guidelines. But that's something, again, that's freely available if countries are interested. But that's something we also work with countries to apply. So I will stop there and pass it on to the rest of the panel.
Okay, thanks very much, Muzani. I'll move on now to the chair of CGA.
Thank you, William. First, I would want to say something that I didn't say in my initial intervention. That actually the CG also works in partnership with the other actors, of course, dealing with issues of transparency and reporting, including GSP, of course, represented by the Armenia here, and also including the IPCC. And therefore, instead of reinventing the wheel, like I'm just giving an example, the materials we use for GAG, national GAG inventories training is actually materials that have been developed by the IPCC. And then there are other ways in which we collaborate with the GSP, including sometimes, of course, having joint training events or our collaborating training events. And that is important to underline. Now, in terms of how the CG, of course, ensures that our capacity building efforts, of course, are sustainable and help parties, of course, to respond to their evolving, to the very fast evolving reporting requirements. One, I think I would want to remind ourselves that, of course, the CG is a creation of parties through COP decisions, and therefore it directly responds, of course, to reporting needs, of course, as identified, of course, and outlined through conference of the parties' decisions. And in terms of structuring our training materials and programs, of course, they are dynamic enough, of course, to ensure, of course, to ensure that they respond to emerging issues, and dynamic in the way that, of course, then we review them every often, of course, in response to emerging reporting needs. Of course, the two tools, the main tools now for reporting by parties under the current transparency mechanism, of course, are national communications and biannual update reports. And we look at all those issues. And right now, of course, we have already prepared some proposal for any future revision that, of course, we have submitted to the SBI for consideration. Two, in terms of sustainability, of course, we also must remember that, of course, all the participants to our training programs must be nominated through their national focal points, because we do not just want to build your capacity at individual level at the expense of institutional capacity development. And therefore, the thinking is that, of course, if the national focal point, of course, through consultation, the national domestic consultations then identifies the participants, then we know those participants, of course, will belong to an institution that is responsible or that plays a role in reporting, and therefore perhaps there is that will ensure sustainability. Now, in that, there is also an opportunity that many parties, of course, sometimes don't seem to be very much aware of, that the CG actually can also respond to special requests from parties or groups of parties based on, of course, on their own perhaps regional needs, and we respond to those needs. And this is a facility that has not been exploited a lot by parties. As far as I know, it has only, we have only gotten 2 requests from my own recollection, and we have done our best, of course, as a CG, of course, with the support of the Secretariat, to respond to them. Now, we are also actually looking ahead at the CG, and therefore we are also in consultations with the other institutions under the convention that have got a role assigned, of course, under the Paris Agreement with respect to transparency and the transparency framework and reporting in general. And therefore, that shows you how much flexible the CG is in terms of responding to evolving needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I turn quickly now to Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think it was a very good selection of order of speakers, because what I'm going to say really echoes what's been said by Mosami as well as my CG colleague. When we were faced with this question, we looked into what are the key factors, and we do notice that part of the TOR of the CGE is really to help the countries really think about and facilitate the development of long-term sustainability process of NC, national communications, and BURs. And it's already been identified, and we completely agree with, that the key factor to make these sustainable at the end of the day is really about sustainable institutional arrangements. There's, Mosami already said, improving institutional capacity, as well as improving technical capacity, and the CG chair also mentioned these things, and we completely agree with those. And furthermore, in terms of the elements for sustainable institutional arrangements for MRV, we're basically looking at establishing credible national legal and formal arrangements, choosing and maintaining appropriate coordination body, in-country institutional technical capacity building, again, echoing what's been said by the United States, and having a very robust mechanism for stakeholder engagement and involvements. These are not what the JEF has come up with. These have been already been identified by CG as well as the CCC, and we agree with these, and we strive to ensure that our regular projects, as well as the initiatives that we're supporting under the MRV framework do have these elements so that there is consistency, if you will, on what's coming out of the lessons, as well as lessons learned, as well as best practice be cascaded through the support the GIF gives. One thing I wanted to add is that because we're the financial mechanism, operating entity, the financial mechanism for this, and we've been supporting the NACOMs and BURs, I think to help the countries enhance these types of sustainable institutional arrangements, the key role the GEF can play is literally to provide financing on an expedited basis and really on a predictable manner. And we have been doing this since January of 1995. And to come here, we looked into how many national communications and how much have we programmed. And it's actually a staggering number. When you're looking at $500,000 for national communications, $325,000 for BURs, we don't necessarily think that those are a lot of resources per project. But we've actually done 435 national communications total across all the countries. And that's a lot of cumulative and collective experience of doing these kinds of things. And also, and that's been done in 150 countries already. And another figure that we wanted to share with you is how much have we spent on national communications? It's over $250 million already. We're talking $260 million. That's a significant amount of resources. And if we can actually program these resources following some of the lessons learned that's come out of the CGE and CCC to really establish the longer term institutional capacity, I think the future is quite bright. And just to give you another set of figures for BNIM update reports, admittedly, those are newer, but so far we've already programmed resources for 120 BURs. So that's in 101 countries, including some of the LDCs and CIS that do not really need to do them, but they want to do them. So we're providing support. And the support's now up to $51 million. Again, quite a significant amount of resources. And coupling those with the global support program that Damiano talked about, where countries can come together and share lessons learned, really think about how to do these things, clustering at the sub-regional level or even regional level. These are some of the really interesting as well as innovative ways to make sure that countries themselves, when receiving resources to do these types of conventional obligations, also have other opportunities to really come together. And just going back to the NACOM issue, when we first started to do national communications, we did notice there was a significant delay, if you will, for the countries to be able to submit their reports, right? I mean, we looked at them, some countries took over 10 years, right? As of now, most of the countries are coming to us requesting support for the fourth national communications. And if you map them out, you will see that the amount of time most of the countries will take to get from submitting requests for resource allocation to the actual submission of the national communications have significantly shortened. And some of the two countries are already onto their sixth national communications. I mean, that's Mexico and Belarus. So again, a lot of good lessons learned, and some countries can, I'm sure, share their own versions of what works for them. And we want to be able to encourage that. Last point in terms of sustainable institutional strengthening as well as arrangements, the Paris Decision on Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency is literally on this particular topic for both pre and post 2020. So the CBIT it's got three aims. One is to strengthen national institutions for transparency related activities in line with national priorities. The second one is to provide relevant tools, training, assistance for meeting the provisions as stipulated in Article 13, which is basically on transparency, and to really assist in the improvement of transparency over time. Again, having this kind of cumulative experiences as well as doing things and making the transparency of action as well as transparency support more robust. So that's just getting started. As I said in my opening talk, we will be able to announce the very first set of projects supported under the CBIT Trust Fund next week. Our CEO will make the statement. And actually, you will get to hear from the recipient countries that managed to pioneer this concept and have their projects approved to hit the ground and running. So I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to GIZ.
Thank you. Well, being the last, obviously, many things have been said already here. And I would like to, well, focus on one aspect that has been mentioned by all the members of the panel, and that has been the establishment or the enhancement of institutional arrangements, which is the key to provide any support that is sustainable over long term in the countries that we are supporting. Because as the experience shows, without these institutional arrangements, nothing is going to last over time. So this is a key point and is common to all countries. It always differs from country to country what kind of institutional arrangements work best. But without this issue, this is not going to be sustainable over time. Aside from institutional arrangements, what we are always trying to do at the very beginning is to take stock of the situation. So what is there and where should we build up? Because this is also a very important starting point. So some countries are more advanced, some others are less advanced, but we need to understand where we are at, and also together with the partner countries, the countries we are supporting, we need also to understand from them what are their priorities, not only what we identify as priority, but what is more important for them. So given this willing from the country to contribute, identifying their priorities and starting with this institutional arrangement setup, then we can agree on a capacity building program that allows as well for ownership from the country, which is also very important. We need also as well this ownership by the country, and as well at least some compromise of the countries we are supporting to provide as well people that will be there continuously. So they need to provide as well some human resources that are going to be trained and that are going to be part of the system that they want to develop. So what we do, a part of this taking stock and ensuring ownership and putting a lot of effort on the development of the institutional arrangements, is as well, bringing a broad range of stakeholders together, because MRV and transparency systems, they require the participation of a broad number of stakeholders. And this is not only true for developing countries, but also for developed countries, because you need to get data from a lot of stakeholders, and you need to engage with different stakeholders to ensure success of your mitigation efforts. And obviously, this is also related to MRV. Once we have defined priorities and we've taken stock, then we work on tailor-made support to countries. So we agree with countries what priorities are there and what kind of support they need, whether it is exchange with other countries, whether it is technical support, whether it is support to set up these institutional systems. We also try to have support by local people as well. We always have local advisors from the GIZ in the countries we are supporting with MRV. And I see that I don't have so much time left, so I will conclude. We also provide as well additional support by facilitating peer-to-peer exchange with other countries. And this is a very important component, because many countries want to learn from experiences from other countries. This south-to-south cooperation is fundamental to the success of capacity building. And depending on the level of understanding of MRV and transparency, and also we've been talking about GHG inventories, we also support this peer exchange with developed countries as well. As I mentioned before in my presentation, we also cooperate with the German Environment Agency for exchanges related to reporting on greenhouse gas inventories or biennial reports in the case of Annex 1 countries. But this also can support as well the preparation of more ambitions or improve biennial update reports by Annex 1 countries. And I don't want to forget as well that we also have prepared a series of tools and knowledge products. And with this, I finish my explanation here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Oscar. I will open the floor again to participants. Yeah, I already see a hand up here. Can you bring the mic? And if you have any questions from from you audience or comments you want to make, or you want to share your experience also working with developing countries, you're welcome to do so. Identify yourself and then ask your question or to make your comment.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Okay. My name is Jackie Mercer. I'm with the Pollutant Inventories and Reporting Division at Environment and Climate Change Canada. And although we're not an official support provider, we have in the past provided some bilateral support to countries upon request in terms of improving transparency in MRV systems. And I guess the Secretariat's last question really highlighted the fact that demand for this support is increasing and how others can get involved. And so I'm going to put the US, I think, on the spot here. Sorry, but anyone on the panel can answer. But really, how is it that you can prioritize providing MRV transparency support to others, given that you have your own sort of inventory improvement needs? And at the EPA in particular, how do you sort of build and maintain your own internal capacity? And then do you have dedicated staff that do this outreach, or is it sort of 50% of your inventory experts' time is sort of dedicated to providing support, or do you have a special team that does this sort of outreach? Thanks.
Okay, good. Any other question, comment? That's not the case. US, if you want to respond.
So maybe I'll ask you to repeat the first question. I think I didn't get the first question. I might be starting backward.
How do you prioritize doing this work when you have your own inventory?
Yeah, no, it's a challenge working on the inventory, and it's certain. So I can say I do work on a sector, and so that enables me to have a little bit more time. But it is a balance, and we do have to engage others who we work with and other experts who work in the US. And we also work with Colorado State University, for example, who supports us in compiling the AFFLU inventory, for example, for expertise in working with other countries on compiling that information. And our own team, yes, is involved in day-to-day compiling the US greenhouse gas inventory and certainly working on the improvements in that effort. But they do contribute sort of on an ad hoc basis. And I want to say, again, we bring in other organizations who help us. We have a dedicated team at EPA with sectoral coordinators who are responsible for leading the compilation of those estimates, but they do themselves individually have teams that they work with and coordinate that include other agencies, but also experts outside of the US government too, including consultants. So I think it's how you manage that process to ensure that it's sustainable. That's important, and there are ways to do that. I think I answered that first question. And was there a second? Oh, same, right, yes. So yeah, I will pass it. If anybody else wants to contribute to that from their own experience, maybe Germany.
Yeah. I can talk from the experience of one of the projects that I showed on my presentation before, this Information Matters project, because there we have a cooperation with the German Federal Environment Agency. And those are the people that compile the GHG inventory for Germany as well. So we are, through the GIZ, we provide support to countries with help of consultants, but we also facilitate this peer exchange among Germany and the countries that request experience exchange with Germany. And obviously we have to take into account when the experts in Germany are available. So it's difficult to have them provide a lot of support in the periods of time of the year where they have to prepare the own inventory or they have other reports to prepare. So we have to find an agreement on what is the best period of the year to have these exchanges. But otherwise, we also have support from, as I said, consultants, and we try to have also this exchange of experience with other countries we are supporting. So Damiano mentioned before, for example, this good cooperation with Chile. This happens as well in Information Matters, and there is a great exchange of experience among Chile and other countries in the region, for example, with the Dominican Republic. But we have also other countries as well where there is exchange of experiences. So even outside the project, we also had experience exchange through conference calls or video conferences with experts from South Africa, sometimes because some countries, requested some experience exchange with other countries. So we are not only taking the time of experts from Annex 1 countries, from developed countries, which have an inventory cycles and they need to comply with these requirements. We are also trying to use other resources and experience from also developing countries.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, okay. I have some questions for
Good evening to the panel. My name is Javier Gordillo. I'm from the Ministry of Environment in Peru. I'm the Managing Director of the Environmental Research and Information Office. We have in Peru a very good relationship with GIZ, with the German corporation, working one of the largest projects in Latin America. Right, we are right now working on the second phase of the project, supporting the information system. Also with UNITAR, UNDP, we're beginning a new project also for reporting emissions, and also with the World Bank. With the World Bank, we're getting a project in the second semester of next year for almost $70 million to support the system, also the information system, infrastructure and technical capacity, and also to support the infrastructure of the system. But as an experience, I think there's a very good experience that we're having in Peru. As you know, the government is a new government right now. We have elections 3 months ago, I'm sorry. And our perspective is to still working with a technical cooperation, because the support that we're giving from the ministry is to the regions. And we are trying to install the same system in the regions. We have 25 regions in Peru. We get to all of them right now, but as you said, there are different capacities, different agendas, and different technical support from the technical cooperation, also from the central government. However, we would like to get also more support, probably with GF. How can we approach you for more projects, and also to USAID in Peru, and how can we get the support and also in order to improve our system, no? Because the reporting for us right now, we're going as a strategy for Peru to be in the 2021 as a member of OECD country. And next week, I'm going to be there on a meeting for 2 days, working on the methodologies on how to report through the systems. And for me, that's a great experience to be here also, and we can approach in order to know all the different methodologies that you can have to improve our system in Peru. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peru. Would you guys want to respond quickly to the question? I mean, if you can't, that's fine, because we have a last question, which maybe I should have turned that question to Peru, actually, because they already touched on some experience that they have there. Before I do the summary of the second part, can you put up the question? And this, I would just want 1 or 2 delegates from the audience just to volunteer, and if you can respond. Sorry to put you on the spot, but that would be great to hear your response. And it's more to the developing countries, those that receive the resources or that are provided, are technical or financial. How do you ensure that you are able to effectively utilize the support provided to you? Specifically, how can you ensure that this support enables you to build a sustainable and robust MRV and transparency system in your country that provides you with clear direction on mitigation actions you can take? I think really, if you paid attention to Peru, I mean, he's virtually touched on that question. But if there are any other countries with the audience that would want to respond to this question, especially from developing countries, if there are any that would want to volunteer. India, you want to try? Sorry to put you on the spot, but it will be good to also hear from you how you're managing in country to ensure that the resources that are coming in are also helping you to be able to do your work?
Thank you. My name is Ajay. I work for Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. We are responsible for the GHG inventory in the country, and as you know that the diversity and the number of sources we have, we don't receive any bilateral assistance on this, but the funds utilized are through the JEF, UNDP. We had submitted 2 national communications so far and 1 BUR. We currently working on the 2nd BUR and the 3rd national communication. We expect to complete the 2nd BUR in around 6 months time, and our target for the 3rd national communication is the 2018. Our experience has been that we have been continuously improving our tier systems from national communication, 1st national communication, to the 3rd national communication, and also the BUR. At present, we are in the process of establishing a national inventory management system in which some preparatory work has gone. This would include obviously the developing MRV systems and the transparency. Because we have a number of agencies which support us for various sectors, like US. We have for the forestry sector, the Indian Institute of Sciences, Bangalore, which does the overall calculations and cross verification. One thing which we would like to improve in the current work which we do is the verification, because the verification so far have been done by the same institutions which have produced the data. So we need to develop a system in which we have more accuracy and data improvement. There are currently around 21 institutions, different institutions. So it becomes a challenge for us also to collate and verify. So that's why if the national inventory management system comes up, we hope that the delay which we are seeing now in terms of preparation of the national inventory will, I think, will help us in that. So I think so far we are also seeing that how the national inventory system which we have produced help us in designing our mitigation actions, because certain things which we have given in our the INDCs are now being back calculated in terms of what are the various sectors where we can achieve, because the targets which were given was for the nationwide, and so inventories are helping us in targeting those sectors which we think that we can put our resources on.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. I think this is how far time would allow us. I think it would be nice to get additional responses from the audience, but I think we also have to be mindful of the time. Just to mention, listening to the panelists and also the intervention from a colleague from Peru and India, I think a couple of points come through very clearly. To ensure sustainability at a national level, establishing or improving existing or institutional arrangements, I think that capacity is key. So that's one thing that I think we all take away. Certainly, you cannot do this without the necessary tools and also knowledge. So knowledge management and appropriate tools development are also very critical to ensure the sustainability of the work at a national level. I think I would combine cooperation with stakeholder engagement at the national level as also one other important aspect of it. Cooperation both at the national level, but also with other agencies that work within the country. That means engaging relevant stakeholders at the national level is also an important factor that would ensure sustainability. You cannot overemphasize the need to have country ownership I think that is key in all the things that countries will do at the national level. So that is also very important. And the support provided are also tailor-made, targeted. That helps also to ensure that it's not like just one size fits all. So the program is not designed and imposed on somebody somewhere else when it doesn't fit the national circumstances. The issue of peer learning, I've already raised that, so that is really covered. But to just touch on what our colleague from Jeff mentioned, I think Jeff's response to the request from parties has also been very useful, as it does it through expedited financing methods or approaches. Certainly, it also, as was mentioned, ensures predictability of the resources for the work that they do, which is very, very critical. And then one last point that I want to mention is that, and that came from the response from Damiano in terms of the evolving and emerging needs of countries. So it's not that you develop systems and that's it, you go and sleep and it works forever. But it's so dynamic that you need to look at how you improve on the system over time to actually be able to respond to the existing but also emerging needs at the national level. So that's what I captured for the session, and I think it was a very useful and lot of learning for all of us. Would you want to join me and thank the panelists for their very active engagement? Okay, so with that, I also want to thank the audience. Certainly without you, we'll be talking to empty house and or empty chairs. So thank you for your participation and enjoy your evening. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.